Okay, so in this lesson, I'm going to start looking at looping constructs. So these looping constructs are where in Python or in any programming language, we get the program to repeat a step or a series of instructions. And depending on whether we want them to repeat a set number of times or until a condition is met, then we would use either a count controlled loop or a conditional loop. In this case, we're going to be looking at a count controlled loop, a for loop, which will execute a piece of code for a specified amount of times. So I'm going to show you this in pseudocode, and then we're going to see an example of a count controlled loop running in Python to see just what's going on when we create and use a count controlled loop. So as I said, a count controlled loop in Python, or in pseudocode rather, is a for loop. Okay, so we specify the number of times that we want the loop to execute at the beginning of the loop, the programming, the program extract excerpt that we want to execute. So if we can see here in the pseudocode listing, remember in pseudocode we use capitalized for keywords. So for I, now I is a counter, and in the initial instance we set that to 0, and we want to go up to 9. So this code will execute 10 times. So I starting at 0 and I is 0, and then it will go through the program. Now my program is very simple. It's one line. It outputs I multiplied by 3. And then we get to this last part, which is the next keyword. This tells the program to go back to the start of the for loop and execute again. Now, just as a built-in feature of for loops, each time we iterate through the loop, the counter will increment by 1, will go up by 1. Okay, so in the first instance, I is set to 0. The loop executes, we come back around, I is now set to 1, and the loop executes through here, goes back around again, and it keeps doing this until we get to 9. Once it gets to the counter gets to 9, so I takes the value of 9, the loop will execute, and then at this point it will break out and then go to the next line of code which follows the for loop. And that's basically where you would use a for loop. Now, for loops can be very, very useful for simply executing a block of code a set number of times, or going through a list, an array of information, and using each item within a list when we already know the length of the list. And in fact, in Python, it's very easy to use a list as a for loop as the range for a for loop, the length of that list. And in fact, in that way, it's fairly dynamic. The list can get longer, and the for loop will still iterate through the length of the list. That's beyond the scope of this lesson. We just want to look at a basic for loop and it executing. So if we look down now at my second block of code here, which is 2 lines long. Okay, the first line, if you see that, it starts with the keyword for. We've got I as the counter again. And in Python, when we want to set a range of values, we use in range. There's various other ways we can do this, but for simplicity, we will do emulate as close as possible what we've got in the pseudocode listing. So from 0 to 9. And so this will execute through from 0 through to 9, the counter incrementing each time. And with Python, instead of indicating the beginning and the ending of a for loop using the for keyword and then the next keyword, the code that we want to execute in Python is simply indented. Okay, this is why indentation spacing is really, really important in Python. Okay, so if I click play here, and we'll see this execute, and you'll see the output here. So we get print I multiplied by 3 for each iteration. So when I is 0, of course 0 multiplied by 3 is 0, and so on and so forth until we get to the 8 multiplied by 3, and that final iteration. Note that it doesn't output 9 multiplied by 3. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 iterations. That's because in Python, that value here goes up to but not including. So if I wanted it to iterate through those full 10 times, I would have to change this to 10, as you can see there. And if I execute that now, and then we will get 10 iterations, 0, so 3 multiplied by 0, by 1, by 2, by 3, up to 3 multiplied by 9, or 9 multiplied by 3, which is the value that I takes for each iteration. So that is essentially what for loops are for. Now, you can use for loops for numerous things, and later on you will see for loops being used to iterate through lists, and including nested for loops. So a for loop inside another for loop for iterating through two-dimensional arrays. Okay, but that will be for another video at another time. I hope that's been useful. If you have any questions, queries, doubts that you want to raise, please pop them in the comments. And I'll be producing lots more content, so please feel free to subscribe, and you'll be notified of any content when I upload it.